PFC, Richard H. Wheeler, United States Army, World War II. Richard served as an Army paratrooper in World War II. With the Pack Howitzer Unit, he was with the 460th Parachute Field Artillery Battalion attached to the 517th Parachute Infantry Regiment, an infamous parachute regiment during World War II. Saw a lot of action at the Battle of the Bulge and at the end of the war, 1944-1945. And this tells a tremendous story. I hooked up with Richard at Battle of the Bulge reunion. It was in Columbus, Ohio, September of 2008. This particular interview was done on September 13th, 2008. Richard was 84 and a half years old, passed away 3 years later at 87, 2011. He was drafted into the Army June of 43, found himself in Europe fighting for his country, 19 years of age. And the rest is history, folks. And I want to thank Marty and Celia Wheeler. Marty is Richard's son. Thank you, guys. It's been a long time, and I'm happy to bring you his story. Today on my Voices of History channel, it's a powerful story, and you can be proud of his legacy that he's left for his family. And Marty, God bless you for your efforts to support our veterans in our country. I appreciate it. I salute you both. Amen. Okay, folks, if you'd like to sponsor one of these stories, take ownership in this like Marty and Celia have done, you can do so by clicking on a link in the video description of this video, or go to my website, larrycapetto.com, click on Sponsor a Vet. You can donate to this work. There's a donate link in the comments section of this video. Voices of History Radio is going strong 24 hours a day. It's accessible through my website, larrycapetto.com. You can download the apps on the Google Play or the Apple App Stores. Type Voices of History Radio and you can download it for free, folks. A lot of people are getting in on the action, and I listen to it all the time. I'm mowing my yard yesterday, working in the yard. I listen to it at home, in the car, on my phone, on my computer, wherever I'm at. It's in the palm of our hands, living history, folks. So let's get this out to our kids who need to know why they're free, especially in the day that we're living, fighting for our same freedoms today as our veterans fought for. So thank you for subscribing to this channel. Thank you for watching, and I just appreciate you. Share these videos, and I hope you enjoy Richard Wheeler's story. God bless you.
Uh,
84 and a half.
okay. What year did you go into the military?
I went in June of 1943.
Were you drafted?
Yes,
Army?
Army, that's what I volunteered for.
Okay. What job did you do in the Army? Which go into?
Okay, my unit was a Pack Howitzer unit, and it was a 460th Parachute Field Artillery Battalion attached to the 517th Infantry Combat Team.
Okay.
That was my unit,
All right.
and I stayed with them throughout the whole war.
What was your rank during like the Bulge?
Well, I made PFC.
Okay.
I got lots of rank there.
Okay. We're going to kind of bounce around a little bit, but
yep.
for time's sake, we'll focus probably on the Bulge. But at what point, you go by Richard?
Yes.
At what point, Richard, did you go overseas?
Well, we went over in March of 1944. We went into to Italy,
Okay.
That's our unit came into above Salerno in Italy and on up to Rome. And that's where we prepared for the jump into southern France.
And when was the jump?
The jump was 4:45 in the morning, August the 15th, 1944.
Was that an Operation Market Garden, or what was that?
No, that was, I don't remember the name, but there was a Special Forces, there was an English outfit in there. There's a number of units that was in that whole jump there.
And then from that point, take me into, you know, the fall of 44 and then eventually into the Bulge.
Okay, we was up on the lines for about 156 days.
Wow.
And then when the Germans broke through 18th Corps, which we was assigned to in Europe, they called all of the airborne units, European side, into Italy and the United States to come into the Bulge. And we landed up on the point where the Germans were hitting.
Tell me what the Germans were trying to do and the purpose of their objective to push down.
Well, the Germans were trying their best to make a division between the English and the Americans. So according to what Hitler wanted to do was to have the Americans and the English maybe ask for a ceasefire, then that way he could get on the Russians. But they wanted to go into the coast up there, and then because all the oil was, everything else was up there that he could use.
Was obviously they weren't successful. Were they successful to a point, or did they catch us off guard and by surprise?
Well, I believe they did, because our military units, military intelligence unit didn't know that Hitler had such a large army of, I'm not mistaken, it was 80-some thousand, plus how many tanks I don't remember. But they told him, his weather people, that the winter, December of 44 would be cloudy, cold, and whatever else winter brought on in that Belgium area, and they told him to hit then. And so we were pulled up into the Bulge out of southern France, and all the units, all the airborne units, wherever they was at, came down into the Bulge area. And my unit only has 2,200 men. We're not a division, but that's because we could be used quickly and fast, because we didn't have a large contingent or whatever it was. But our 75 pack howitzers, we pulled with a 3/4-ton weapons carrier. And that's what I was on, is a 3/4-ton weapon carrier.
And you didn't jump in there. You guys
No.
just made your way up there.
No, well, they went in by truck, but no, we didn't jump in there at all.
And you're with the 517?
Yes, it's a combat team. But I think in that Bulge area, with the way the clouds were, there's no way that you could have successfully performed an operation. It was fouled up enough as it was. It took us about 3 days to get back where we were supposed to be.
And your division, casualties, you suffer a lot of casualties, you guys?
Well, overall, there's 1,600 men. Overall.
Out of 2,200?
Yeah.
1,600 were casualties?
Yes.
Holy smokes.
You got to remember now, we were given $50 more a month to be airborne.
Oh my goodness. So what are you guys doing during this time? You fighting your way? You holding the position? What kind of combat are you getting into?
Well, we supported our 517th Infantry, but there were times when different divisions would call on artillery fire, so they shifted us around to do that. But when we went from southern France up to the Bulge, we was in trucks and went up in that way. But because of they just used us wherever they wanted to use us. That's the way it went. But the Bulge was 12 below zero. And if you read in Patton's book, he states that. But it was terribly cold. Hell is on one side. I don't know where that coldness goes at, but it's cold. It was cold there. And so there was a lot of frostbitten people. And what really bothered me was the positions a lot of dead people men had. That bothered me greatly.
After they died?
Yeah, after they died, yeah.
How does a young man going into combat, how do you get through those times? I mean, when it's tough, when you see the first guy die at the combat, is it your training, your faith? How do you get through that?
Well, it has a lot to do with your training, which is right. My particular unit, 517th, went to Camp Toccoa, Georgia. And everything was done to get you to quit. Now, I come from Fort Lewis, Washington. 5 days after I graduated out of high school, I was in the Army. And it was 57 degrees there. When we hit Toccoa, Georgia, it was 105 degrees there. And the heat, I never was good in heat. But the only way I could do is just persevere, just do the job, because that's what I've always done. And so when they would continue to ask you, do you want to quit? Do you want to quit? And they just continued to growl at you and everything else. And I got to the point I told them to go to hell. I wasn't going to quit. And so I stayed with the unit, and I'm glad to this day that I did. Because my airborne training, I feel, has made me self-sufficient to go on with things that came into my life that were tear-jerking stuff. So I'm glad that I finished. There's some boys that didn't do it. And as we get older, things of our youth will flood back into our minds. And so I knew this. So I didn't want that over my head that I quit, because I never did quit anything.
Good. Were you carrying an M1?
No, I was carrying a carbine, a 30 caliber carbine. But one time this man had a grease gun, the 45. And so I swapped him the carbine for the grease gun. And the next thing I knew, an officer asked me, "Where'd you get that grease gun at, Wheeler?" Well, I knew that, I said, well, I swapped the guy with it for it. So I carried a 45, and as soon as I could get a carbine, I swapped that person the 45 grease gun for the carbine. The serial numbers weren't the same, but he just looked at me and growled.
So again, Richard, I'm trying to, okay, you're very young at this time. What are you, 20 or something? Or?
No, I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
Is combat, how would you define combat? Describe combat to me.
Okay.
From your perspective.
All right. Combat is like being in a maneuver. If the situations are about the same, the only difference is you're being shot at in combat. And to me, you'll never know when that bullet is meant for you, because you'll not hear it coming. You'll hear them a lot of times zing past you, but the bullet that was meant for you, you'll never know it hit you. You're dead. And so I knew enough not to be a turkey and stick my head up too much.
When you're in combat and maybe the guy on either side of you has been shot, wounded, or killed, and you haven't, does that scare you more, or does your mind just get into this state that you just got to keep going?
Well, I don't think there wasn't a time that I was not scared. But if you went through our type of training, you persevered on what was before you, and the cold was before us. We come up not with the best clothing. We didn't have winter clothing, and so all of us had problems of fingers, feet, whatever else of the cold weather. But you just made it and gutted it out to make sure that you were there at the finish and not leaving halfway through the battle.
Now, I've heard that before. Why weren't you issued cold weather clothing? That's why I'm wondering if you're caught by surprise.
Well, I think that was like everything else in the military. I think it came up so quickly, and they didn't realize that what the Germans were going to do. And I think when they hit so heavy and hard. There was 3 divisions they hit, and I think they almost annihilated the whole divisions. They killed them most of them all. So when we come up, they put us right at the head of that push, and we told them that they weren't going no farther. The bastards wouldn't move us. That's exactly what we said. So we stuck out.
How did you get them to go the other way? What kind of resistance and things did you do?
Well, you just keep shoving and firing and shoving, and when a round or a rifle goes your way, if it's meant for somebody, that person's, you've eliminated him as an obstacle for you to go forward. And so it is, they didn't make us move, but we just keep pushing and pushing on them. And then we ended up in Aachen, Germany, and that was it.
But that push took a while. It didn't happen in one day.
No.
So, now, are you coming up against tanks and artillery? And, I mean, give me a day in and day out situation
Yep.
here.
Well, we fired artillery, 75 pack hours there, but we did other jobs that required us to make sure. See, Germans, another thing the Germans did, they parachuted in behind our lines, and they had German soldiers that spoke perfect English. And so we were told to be sure that you don't have a German soldier penetrate our lines, because they was meant to kill. So we'd ask them all, who was John Wayne, or where's Wrigley Field at? Or what's a Mason-Dixon line? Well, that stumped them right there. To think about if you wore a uniform of your enemy, you were usually shot right away.
The Tiger tanks, did you come against the
No.
German tanks at all?
Not to my knowledge. We could have been firing on them maybe, but usually the Air Force, when the weather did clear, that's where the Air Force come in to help us.
Tell me what you remember about that day. And I heard it was a great day when the skies cleared and all the planes. Tell me what you remember.
Well, I remember airplanes, Liberators, B-17s, and P-38s from horizon to horizon. And we cheered because we knew exactly what the Air Force was going to do for us on the ground. And they did it. They flew on all the roads, bombed everything they could do, and that made our job more simpler too. But we were glad for that. But it's something, I never had nightmares. I've never had nightmares. But my remembrance of things will just go on and on in my life. But my training is what, out to Camp Toccoa, Georgia, is what I feel really did for me to persevere in my time in combat.
Do you ever, I wouldn't say you ever get used to combat, you get through it, but I mean,
Yeah.
That's probably not the correct term, but after talking to so many men like yourself that have served in combat, I think I'm gaining a better appreciation for what you went through as a young man and the mindset it would have taken. And how close did you personally ever get to the enemy, like we are right now, or were they far away always?
Well, on our jump in France, which was before the Bulge now, they made me point man, trying to find out where we was at. Well, I did run into a machine gun nest, and we eliminated that. So that was about the times that I got real close to Germans, live Germans anyway.
Do you remember the first time you were in combat? The bullets being shot at you and how you felt, where was that at? Do you remember the first time?
That was in Italy, and I ducked. And I think that's invariably, the sound of it is gone past you. But like I said before, if the bullet was meant for you, you'll never know it hit you. But getting used to combat, I don't think I've ever heard anyone that said that they were enjoying it or getting used to it or whatever it might be. I don't believe they ever was at that point of life. When we went up into the Bulge, the orders come down to us that we're going to fight the Russians next. That's what was said to us. And we just groaned. We groaned. But the thing about it is, when they said, we're going to move out, everybody's ready to go. There's never no desertion on my unit that I knew of. And no one refused to ever jump in our jumps.
Good.
So we was all young. I was in junior high school when I got my first welcome you into the Army, from the Army, and I went to the draft board, and I was 19 in my senior year at high school, and they told me that you'll be in the Army within a week, and I was. They greeted me. But they give me $19 to be a private. And then they told me, I'll give you $50 more if I go airborne. Well, that's $69. And I never in my life ever seen that much money or knew how much it was. So I was all ready for that. Yeah.
You did pretty good with that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, the food was excellent to me, because I come up out of a time when you had white beans, lard, and homemade bread for whatever you ate. So the Army food was excellent as far as I was concerned, except the K rations and C rations, and I had a hard time with them.
Tell me about the German soldiers. Are they good fighting men?
Yes, they were excellent. But to see, the thing about the German soldier was his officers was the one that really led him. And so in our outfit, when whoever was the snipers, they looked for anybody that looks like a German officer or a non-commissioned officer. Now, and they shot them, because by doing that, we knew that the German soldiers would be at a standstill, because they had to have somebody to tell them what to do. But in our unit, if you had a sergeant that goofed up, was sent to the stockades or got stripes removed from his arm, when we went up on the line, they gave him his stripes back. There's no qualm. He went right back into his job. And the stockade emptied out, and everybody went back to the unit.
Did you go into the concentration camps at all?
No, I did not. I've seen them, but I never went into them.
What do you mean you saw them? You went by them or
Yeah,
whatever?
well, yes. But no, we never seen them at all. I mean, went into them.
How important would you say the Battle of the Bulge was to the ending of the war with Germany?
Well, to me, I wonder what would happen to this country if the Germans had won. If they had won. Now, I've heard some intelligence reports that Hitler had a V-2 ready to hit the United States in 1945. So we were at a point to where we beat them before they could launch them. But they was ready. No, we don't. To this very day, I look around and say, well, I thank the Lord that we did win and they didn't.
Yeah. Most definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. Were you ever able to help any of the wounded during your time in the Bulge? I mean, there were a lot of casualties, or was that
Yep.
just the medic's job?
No, well, anything that you couldn't deviate whatever you was going to do, but with a wounded person, you couldn't do that. And so we had medics, and you'd hear the call for a medic. So you know right away they were being cared for, you know, whatever it might be. But whatever your job was, if somebody got hit, the first place you couldn't ever do nothing for him anyway, and you didn't know he was going to die or not. So you just had to go on.
That's tough,
Yep.
I would think. Why do you think you made it through and a lot of guys didn't?
Well, I always feel maybe the Lord's got something for me that I don't know about yet. Like I said, I'm 84 and a half, and how long I got to live, I don't know. But the ones that really did win the awards and the approval of the United States, they never came back. To those of us who made it through are fortunate to talk about the ones that died. So I feel very fortunate and very lucky that I did come back, knowing what I know and seen of the war. It was gruesome.
Well, I've heard it said war is hell.
Yep, it really is. It is. Because it's like teams of wild animals battling each other. But there's more at stake than what animals did. But if the Germans had won, then I think this country of ours now would be a lot different than what it is today.
Did it ever not make sense what you guys were doing?
Oh yeah, no. The only ones we challenged at times were second lieutenants because we didn't think they knew enough to be telling us what to do when we was combat veterans and they were just new lieutenants up on the fields. But no, it's we're not a country that's a dictatorship. We were all civilians that went forth into battle, doing what we were told to do, and that's what we did. And so we're here today, and some aren't.
Part of why I'm doing this is to share it with our younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
The whole documentary series, all the films I've done, and to help educate them to the freedoms that we have and the sacrifices that have been made in our country.
Good.
And Richard, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom means to me being able to do what I want to do. If I want to be a garbage man, or if I want to farm, or if I want to go to school, if I want to get married, or whatever it might be, that's my opportunity to do that without being told you will not do that. So my freedom was paid for by men that are laying in cemeteries now.
What would you tell a young person today who is born in a free country and probably takes their freedoms for granted like a lot of us, really doesn't understand the sacrifices that have been made? What would you tell a young person about the price or the cost for freedom?
Well, freedom is not cheap and it's not free. You can't sit on a fence. You got to be on one side or the other and make judgments that are for you or for your family or for your country. And by doing that, as a democracy, then we have that right to do that because we are free. But you have to do something to support it. You either got to vote for it, or write a letter, or make a story, or tell somebody that I'm glad you enjoying your freedom, what you got.
Tell me what the American flag means and represents to you.
Well, the American flag to me shows that down through the time, it's persevered. And my hope and comments are that it will persevere through my great-grandchildren on down through time, however long that we do last.
When you look at pictures of yourself back during the war or things, what do you think about when you see yourself a young man and all these years later and you lived your life, you've lived a good life, and do you ever just have that thought that you fought in probably, if we could call it a great war, one of the greatest wars we've ever been involved with? I mean, you take pride in that?
Yes, but I also laugh, and I say to myself, could I have been that young? Yeah, you'll get some pictures that'll show me at 19 years of age, and looking at me now, it doesn't seem possible. I sent a picture home to my mother from Rome, Italy, and you'll be getting that picture. My mother sat down and cried, I don't know how long, for that. But somebody has to stand up and go forward, and sometimes they come back in a box, and sometimes they come back from harm's way, disformed or whatever it might be, and you have to persevere. You have to be determined that you'll persevere, and that's what I did.
Do you remember where you were on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day of '44?
I was up on the lines in Belgium Bulge, and we just got out of a deuce and a half, and we looked around and it was cold. We knew that. And so well, we said to each other and ourselves, well, we're here, what are we going to do now? So we found out pretty soon what we were going to do. Yep.
And what was that?
That start shooting, start defending what you have, start stopping the Germans. That was the big thing you had to do, because they were bound determined that we weren't going to go into Germany. So we had to say to them, we will take you, but you won't take us.
So is it like the artillery's going, the troops are pushing ahead, and you guys are just firing? Or I mean, I'm trying to imagine in my mind if you're advancing, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, and then if you have tanks or half-tracks supporting you, is it just a continual day in and day out push?
It's a continual, it never stops. It never stops, and depending upon what type of a weapon you had. We had the back holler 75s, so we was up close. But in the back, we could hear larger caliber guns, 155s, 8-inch, or even 240s firing. We knew which one were firing at us, but the Germans had some big guns too that would fire on us. Plus they had a rocket, what they call nibble whippers, and they just pulverized the ground when they'd fired those things.
Were more people killed by artillery or small arms fire, or what do you think?
Well, I think most was killed by a lot of artillery, because there was a lot of men that maybe didn't fire 1 or 2 rifle shells a week. But with more artillery, mortars going off than that. It was all the time you heard firing someplace.
How nerve-wracking does that get? I mean, is there a lot of uncertainty, or is it just pretty defined what you have to do?
Well, you just, I don't think it was nerve-wracking in the sense that you didn't know what was happening, because you did know what was going on. So you just made yourself believe that you were going to go forward, whatever came down. But being scared, I was scared all the time, I think.
Did you ever feel invincible, like nothing could happen to you as a young man?
Like John Wayne? No, thank you. No, that never happened. No, I never felt that way, because I knew that being stupid would get me killed. So that's one thing, I tried not to be stupid.
Yeah, I don't think Hollywood can portray what combat is really like. I've never talking to people like yourself.
Well, to a lot of people, a lot of the old actors were people they would like to copy. And so watching movies like John Wayne has done, you thought that was the way it really was. Well, it's not. It's not. It's something that's way beyond your imagination, of cold, without food, not taking a bath, being shot at, you shoot at. So it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, day in, week out, month out.
So how long do you guys go without bathing of any sorts? Weeks?
But yeah, it would be weeks.
Same clothes?
Yep, and that's where you get scabies. And scabies are a vermin, worse than bed bugs. If they get on your body because you're in filthiness, you can be pulled off the line, your unit, and taken back about 5 or 10 miles. And the engineers would set up a shower system. Well, at 10, 12 below zero, they had engineers have not a tent or a building, just a piece of canvas around a shower. And you stripped naked completely before you went into that shower. But the first sergeant standing there with a roster. And everybody in the unit had to shower. And your clothes was all, I don't know, it was burnt, but you got all new clothes. But standing out with no clothes on in 10, 12 below zero, with your shoes off too. So it was, and to this very day, I cannot even stand cold water on me.
So you had one of these showers, huh?
Yep, my unit did, because we had a guy in our outfit that had scabies.
So the whole unit had to go through all
The
that?
whole unit.
That's amazing.
Yep. But I think in a lot of respects too, the military made me a far better man than what I ever was. Because I could look back at myself from before the Army and end up maybe not being as good as what I thought it was after I got out of airborne. And I stuck airborne all the way. I didn't sham it. I did what I was told, and I come out of it alive.
Yeah. Well, you did, obviously, and you're here to talk to me today and to share
Yep.
your story. So,
Yep.
have you talked like this before? Have you shared your story before with people, or?
Okay, my mother and dad did not know anything about my service time. They knew I was airborne, but other than that, they knew nothing. And my daughter is 56, and she asked me here about a year ago if I had been in the Battle of the Bulge. And I turned to her and I said, "Why, yes, I had been." And she said, "Well, I never knew that." So to this very day, I've re-educated myself and I've become a writer.
Good.
So I'm writing stories for my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, to remember what their grandfather was after I'm dead and gone. There will come a time when I'll die. I realize that, and I'm not so naive thinking that I'm never going to die. But they'll know that their grandfather did something and was something. They'll have volumes of stuff that I'm putting away for them.
Good for you.
Yep.
Good. Yep, and I'll make a copy of this film too, or this interview with you for your family too, as a
Appreciate that.
resource. But we're not quite done yet. You mentioned dying. How about during the war? Were you afraid to die back then?
The only fact, I hate to get hit in the head with a bullet. I figured the bullets might blow out of my head what brains I had, and I didn't want that. They shot me down around the torso. I figured that I could survive through that. But get shot like a turkey in the head, you would never survive that. So I tried not to lift my head around the corner, and be smart about it, and look around the corner, either down low or take your helmet off so they don't see your head coming around.
Is there a story? Did you receive any citations, by the way, like a Bronze Star or anything like that? For
Well, we got bronze arrowheads. We got one, and we got battle stars. I got 7 of those.
Great.
And then at our home here in Columbus, above our fireplace, I have all of my decorations and everything up there. French and Belgium both.
Did you fight in the Ardennes Forest?
Yes.
Tell
But
me
now,
just about the fighting there that went on.
Well, the Ardennes is the officer's word for the Battle of the Bulge. Yes, I was there. I put, if I remember correctly, I think it's about 37 days in there.
Well, I heard that was terrible fighting.
Yeah.
So when they say terrible, you're in a wooded area. What's the combat that's going on there? What's happening?
Well, if you're in a wooded area, you wish you weren't, because if you get an air burst from an artillery shell over you, it'll get you then. Where maybe if you've been out in the open, the shell wouldn't have hit you. But as the shell comes through the timber, trees, or whatever it was, it would detonate itself. But usually an artillery unit is usually out in the open somewhat, because you had to travel your gun around to fire wherever they wanted you to fire. And then, the only thing I always thought to myself, I hope I don't get hit in the head, because that would hurt. I thought maybe that would hurt more than get hit in the chest or the stomach or the legs or something.
Well, when you're actually in combat, are you thinking those thoughts, or just every once in a while you're thinking, oh boy, or...
Well, if you're in combat, you just kind of think to yourself, I hope I don't get it.
In the Ardennes, again, it was hand-to-hand, it was small arms, what kind of fighting?
Well, if you're that close to Germans, it's usually machine gun and rifle fire, or mortar, or 75 pack howitzer like us.
Yeah. But you were there 3 or 4 weeks fighting like that?
About 34 days, 37 days, something like that.
So are you playing, I mean, again, I've heard about the Ardennes Force and the Hurricane Force and
Yep.
these things, but I'm trying to imagine what you did. You woke up in the morning and you guys went through the trees or whatever?
Well, your nighttime, because it was so cold, you might be on guard duty, you might be standing at your gun to fire it, or whatever else that was your duty to do. And so you had to make sure that if you went to sleep, you was protected from the cold weather. And we knew one thing, that if you had a sleeping bag and you was up on the lines, you could be caught in that sleeping bag and be shot in your sleeping bag. So I had a raincoat, and a lot of times I'd wrap that around my head myself and sleep on that like a blanket. But your feet is be wet for days, and it just trench foot, frostbitten was always prevalent at everybody in that area.
Did you get frostbite then?
Yep. And my feet right now feel like, I don't know if they're really hot or they're really cold or it's the nerves or what. I had some what they call gabapentin. It's a medication for nerves. And we took it for about 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. But my hands swelled up on me, made me constipated. My shoulders and my hands, the arthritis that I was going to have. And so it's been about a year now since I stopped. I've stopped taking it now. My wife has took me off of it. I'm glad she did. Yeah.
So, tell me, what do you think the country should remember about World War II?
Well, if they would, remember that somebody made their freedom possibly for them. Don't take things for granted that that somebody will do something for you. You've got to help yourself once, or help somebody else too. But in my airborne training, our continually outlook was, what can I do for somebody else at times? But you also had to take care of yourself, because if you got hit, then that meant that somebody had to take care of you. But I was fortunate, like I said, I came through it.
You ever walk through a military cemetery?
Yes, and I look at all the people who are there wondering just exactly how they got there, I wonder. Of age, combat, or whatever it might have been.
How could you wrap up this segment on the Battle of the Bulge? Is there anything maybe I could have asked you that you didn't tell me about just the history of it? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories in the last year and a half, but I always feel like there's maybe a little piece that I don't have. I think we've covered it pretty good.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's anything.
But the only thing about it, I say, is that when you read about it, Normandy, southern France, wherever it's at, that somebody was doing something for you, for your freedom now. And somebody did something for me. I could have been in the Bulge, maybe somebody far north or far south or the South Pacific did something for me.
But these memories are still pretty clear about the combat and the
Yeah,
day-to-day
yeah, yeah.
operations. And
Yeah, but I believe that I am fortunate that I don't have nightmares. I believe I am. I don't lose no sleep.
what do you think about the men that are here at the reunion? And do you ever look around the room and think y'all have a camaraderie about each other? And do you ever think that you were all young men one time and you were fighting for this country and things are so different today? Do you ever think like that?
Well, the only thing I think about is like we're all a family. In younger years, we used to thought the airborne, the armored tank guys and tanks were the only reason they was around, so we could get used to fighting them.
Do you ever think about how the world would have been different if all you guys hadn't gone to war with everybody else? Do you ever have thoughts like that?
Yep. I've thought of that a lot.
You walk into a store, a restaurant, not that people need to recognize you, but just the thought of what you've done is amazing.
Well, the thing about it is, if you read about what the German army did to the Polish people, the Jewish people, the French, and what they even did to the Italians, that same thing could have happened to us if we'd have lost it. And you've got Iraq and Afghanistan now, that I applaud them for protecting me now at this time of my age. I believe that if my country was to ask me to go back in, I would go. But the question rises in my head, I wonder how long I'd last. But I would be there though. I would be there.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, at the end of my interviews, Richard, I asked the veteran to give me a salute into the camera. Can
Okay.
I ask you?
Okay.
That was a good practice. Let me get my camera set
Okay.
here. Okay. Give me just a second here. Hey, look right into the camera. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you.